Hello everyone, this is Colin once again. Ramadan Mubarak to all the Muslims who began fasting today. May you have an excellent Ramadan. I just wanted to mention a couple topics in this video at the very beginning. I've tried to make this video a number of times, but I find it difficult because there's so much content regarding the Norwegian terrorist who committed the atrocities that happened in Oslo. And many people here on YouTube and elsewhere have done videos or articles on the subject, and I wasn't really sure what to say, but I just watched a video by Richard the Dick Coughlin 616, and I really enjoy his videos, and he mentioned the breaking news about Pamela Geller, who apparently edited an email she posted on her website, Atlas Shrugged, from an anonymous person from Norway, who seemed to fit the profile of Anders Breivik, who is the individual who committed the atrocities in Norway. I quickly went to loonwatch.com because I always go there to read their articles about subjects like this, and indeed they already have an article on the subject that was posted today. Now, one thing that I want to point out is I've watched a lot of videos from different people I agree with, people I disagree with, and I've watched clips from Fox News and CNN about the subject, and I just sort of want to put everything in a little mental pot and just sort of talk about certain subjects that stood out to me. One thing in particular about this terrorist attack is how quickly society was to jump to say the Muslims were behind it. Then we come to find out that Anders Breivik is no way a Muslim, far from it actually. He is a Christian fundamentalist, conservative, ultra-conservative nationalist who actually has, by his own admission, he is a anti-Muslim immigration, anti-Islam, anti-multiculturalism. He doesn't like liberals. The list goes on. This is the individual who did the attacks, and on top of that, he has in his 1,500-page manifesto that he wrote. In there, he talks about people who inspired him, and books who inspired him, and books that people should read. And the list includes people like Pat Condell here on YouTube, Pamela Geller, Robert Spencer, Geert Wilders, the books by pretty much every known author that hates Islam and is anti-Islam. All their books are on this list. Now, people have commented about what the ramifications of that sort of endorsement or hat off from the terrorist to his people who inspired him. I'm not really going to go into this video and point fingers. However, I really think that it's fascinating the reactions that people are having. Conservatives are really having this sort of deflating, projecting experience when it comes to what happened. Most of the time, when a Muslim does something, people are like, oh yeah, well, Muslims do that. Islam stands for that. And there are people on YouTube who have made videos saying, well, okay, so he may have been a Christian, but Muslims do terrorist attacks all the time. In fact, there's 17,000 terror attacks that have happened post 9/11, and only 2 by a Christian and 1 by a Jew. And we come to find out that that is a myth. Loonwatch has a whole separate article that they just did debunking the myth that there have been 17,000 Islamic terror attacks post 9/11. That's a bunch of baloney. So it's amazing how people are trying to spin the situation. The fact is that people need to look within themselves, and what we are seeing are conservatives reacting in a way that Muslim apologists react when an extremist does something in the name of their religion. To be an apologist is not a bad thing, but it's good to be honest. And I think that what's happening is that the conservatives are showing more moments of being disingenuous than they are of being honest. For example, Bill O'Reilly on the Fox News said that this guy wasn't a Christian because O'Reilly, believes in one view of Christianity, whereas Anders Breivik obviously has a very different view of Christianity. But to say that this guy was not a Christian or is not a Christian is incredibly either disingenuous or ignorant. To say that he, like some people on YouTube have been saying, that he was inspired by conservative ideology is also either being ignorant or disingenuous. By his own manifesto, this man says that he was inspired by both. Now we have this thing by Pamela Geller. Now again, as the author of Loonwatch says, or at least the person who wrote the article states, we don't really know for certain whether this was Anders Breivik. However, if we read what was said, the individual makes references about God coming to Earth, God being with them, etc. However, what's scary is that if this wasn't Breivik, this is somebody else who said that they were stockpiling weapons and they were really pissed off about Muslim immigration, and Pamela Geller edited this reproduced email on her that it appeared on her website, Atlas Shrugged. She deleted that one sentence after the attack took place. So it's called cleanup. You know? And what's scary is that even if it's not Breivik, it doesn't matter because someone sent this to her. Talking about violence and mentioning God in the same email. You know, that God would, be with them in the future and things like this. Now, what's happening is the conservatives who hate on Islam are getting a taste of their own medicine because now they have a guy who shares their views. Now, I'm not saying every conservative, now I'm overgeneralizing, but if they shared this anti-Muslim immigration, anti-multiculturalism, hatred of the left, which pretty much, all the people who inspired this guy believe those things, now they're faced with this realization that, oh crap, we created a demon child, and what are we going to do with it? It must be the reaction when, in the movie The Omen, when the parents realized that the Antichrist was their kid. What do? That's the situation where you have to decide what are you going to do. But one thing that people shouldn't do is ignore that fact. Again, I'm not saying that people on that list who are his inspiration endorse him. Pat Condell in his own videos said that, of course, violence is not the answer. And many people on YouTube, conservatives on YouTube, who may share Breivik's views about immigration and things like this, have said, no, this is not the right way to do things. And I completely applaud them for making those statements. It's good that everyone who is sane and not about killing innocent people should condemn such acts of violence. However, condemning can only go so far. We have to ask ourselves the question, why did this happen? How did this happen? What was his mindset? Because what we're discovering is many people, there's this phenomena on the internet, and Loonwatch covered this, of people who are actually endorsing this man. Doing the opposite of what the public figures on his list have done. They are endorsing him and what he did. They're showing him as a symbol for what they stand for. And that is dangerous. So, what people need to do, and this is sort of the point of Ramadan itself, is to become introspective and think about how we go about our daily lives. What are our goals? When we say things to people, how do we say them? What do we mean? What's our purpose? These are things that we need to be asking ourselves. And I'm not just talking about Muslims. I mean, this is something that everyone needs to do right now, because the situation could get out of hand. And it has gotten out of hand. The second that this guy committed these acts, that shows that this view, as Richard the Dick Coughlin says, this narrative between extremists, whether it's the Muslim extremists bouncing off of the conservative, ultra-conservative right, they're feeding off of each other. And the rest of us peaceful, loving, non-ideologue individuals are stuck in the middle of it. And we need to really reflect on how people get to that point and what we can do to prevent such situations to occur in the future. But I'll tell you something, denying things, distorting facts, which I've seen here on YouTube, whether it was a clip from Fox News or whatever. For Glenn Beck and Bill O'Reilly to say, oh, he wasn't a Christian. That's denial. Yes, he was. He likened himself to the Crusades. He wants a new crusade. He saw the symbol of the Knights Templar, etc., etc. This guy was very much a Christian. Okay? Now, he may not be the Christian in the brand that, Glenn Beck and O'Reilly are, but he was a Christian nonetheless. He considered himself a Christian. And that's all that matters, is that he considered himself a Christian. The mistake a lot of people are making is they're speaking about religion, and we do this because we have to communicate with each other. It's easier in communication to overgeneralize groups. Muslims, Christians, Jews, Islam, Christianity, Judaism. In casual conversation, that's one thing, but if you're trying to make a point, you have to understand what you're saying. And to speak about religions as monoliths, where they all must think alike, is a dangerous attitude to have. This is what leads to issues and events like what just occurred in Oslo. When you start overgeneralizing, and that becomes your only means of communicating your points, and you actually seriously believe in these overgeneralizations. Not all members of every religion think alike. To think that is dangerous. You have to understand that there are varieties of opinions, that humans, by definition, are individuals, even if they say they belong to a club or a group or some sort of hobby or something, they are individuals at the end of the day. They will have differences of opinion about many topics. One of which is, if you're angry about something, how do you go about exercising your anger? Now, Anders Breivik is a freaking lunatic. I think we can all agree on that. But he was inspired by something. He was inspired, in his view, by Christianity, by JC, Jesus Christ, and by certain conservative views and persons who have written books. So the honest thing to do would be to assess the situation in an honest fashion and not go about denying, not distancing yourself. Rather, to take a cold, hard look at our own humanity and think about what drives people to do these things. And then for those who inspired him, what is it about their message, their books, that could lead to others to commit similar acts, excuse me. These are the questions we need. This is major introspection that occurs. This is major introspection. And I'd like to end the video with a quote by Carl Gustav Jung, which I think sums up what I'm saying here on a psychological level. He said, "Enlightenment consists not merely in the seeing of luminous shapes and visions, but in making the darkness visible. The latter procedure is more difficult and therefore unpopular." So instead of just, living in la la land and ignoring these things, we need to look within ourselves and then try to understand what leads us to that sort of action, that sort of horrendous violence. This is what needs to be done. Instead of being in denial and not taking responsibility in some part to the situation, like so many of these conservative writers or authors or pundits, they're just, oh no, nothing to do with that, nothing to do with that, no, he wasn't this, no, he wasn't this. The responsible thing to do is to think, crap, this guy read my book. He listed my book in my name amongst people who inspired him. Then he went out and he shot a whole bunch of people. That's a problem. And that is the sort of introspection that everybody involved in that situation needs to do. And to understand the true nature of evil and violence and hatred, we need to also collectively, even if we have nothing to do with the Oslo situation, this is a lesson for all of us to learn. Anytime we see a member of our species do heinous stuff like this, instead of thinking, whatever, and ignoring it or putting it under the rug, we need to, at this point, reflect on this. And if we want to live in a peaceful society, we all want to get along, because we are all clones of each other. We all have different personality types, we have different beliefs, but if we want to live peacefully around the world with each other, this is a call for the introspection that we all collectively need to do. Because, as Carl Jung also said, I'll end the video with this, that the world hangs on a thin thread, and that thin thread is the psyche of man. Thank you everyone for watching. Peace be with you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.